ChatGPT said. Dust swirled in the late afternoon light, a tired golden haze settling over the rail station at Dry Creek. The whistle of the departing train hung in the air, sharp and lonesome, like a wound freshly opened. Eleanor Hayes swayed on her feet, one hand pressed against her belly, the other clinging to the railing of the platform, as though it might keep her tethered to the earth. Her face was pale, nearly translucent in the heat, and her lips trembled with the effort of drawing breath. The child inside her shifted faintly, a flutter that felt more like a warning than a promise. Before her stood Samuel Burke, the rancher who had summoned her by letter, who had sent coins enough for her passage. A broad man with a flushed, ruddy face, he carried his bulk like a badge of authority. His eyes narrowed as he studied her trembling frame. "You're no fit bride," he spat, his voice thick with disdain. "I asked for a strong woman, not some frail thing already half broken." The crowd that lingered on the platform leaned in as if drawn by the scent of blood. Murmurs rose, cruel and quick, the way gossip often blooms. Eleanor's younger sister, Clara, hovered close by, her hand catching Eleanor's arm, her face pale with dread. Clara's beauty was the sort that drew second glances. Youthful cheeks, clear eyes, hair shining like wheat. She shrank from Samuel's glare, yet when he turned to her, his lips curved into a calculating smile. "If the elder's no good to me," he said, "the younger will do. A man's got no use for weakness." Eleanor's throat burned. Shame pressed against her chest harder than the illness gnawing at her body. "Please," she whispered, though even she did not know what she begged for, mercy, dignity, or simply an end to the stairs. Samuel took Clara's silence as consent, grasped her wrist with a heavy hand, and the crowd erupted in a mixture of laughter and pity. It was decided in an instant. Eleanor was discarded like spoiled bread, and Clara, trembling but unwilling to shame her family further, was led away as if bargaining herself for survival. The station emptied, leaving Eleanor alone on the platform. Her knees gave way, and she crumpled into the dust. The air smelled of iron and soot, the taste of rejection thick on her tongue. She pressed her cheek to the wooden planks and thought of the child inside her, of how little strength she had left to give it. She imagined her body sinking into the earth, unmarked and unmourned. By the time she pushed herself up again, the town had turned its back. Doors shut softly as she passed, curtains twitching with watchful eyes. Mrs. Agatha Kincaid, the boarding house keeper, stood with arms crossed on her porch, lips curling. "Poor thing," she said loudly enough for others to hear. "But the Lord don't spare those who bring shame on good men." Her words struck Eleanor harder than any stone. She stumbled beyond the edge of Dry Creek, her dress dragging through the dust, her breath rattling. The land stretched wide and merciless, sky burning with late sun, cicadas buzzing like needles in the air. She thought of lying down among the mesquite and letting the silence claim her. But fate, stubborn as a weed between stones, had other plans. When she collapsed again, it was not the earth that held her, but arms, strong, solid, careful as if lifting something fragile. She opened her eyes to the face of a stranger, a giant of a man, his beard wild, his hair tangled from the wind. His eyes, though shadowed beneath his brow, glimmered with something neither pity nor judgment. Jedediah Boone carried her as though she weighed nothing, his chest broad, his stride steady. She felt the rough fabric of his shirt against her cheek, the faint scent of pine and smoke clinging to him. He did not speak, not at first, only bore her into the darkening woods until the lights of town were swallowed behind them. His cabin was a simple place, carved into the wilderness. Walls of timber, a stone hearth glowing faintly, the smell of wood smoke and broth lingering in the air. He laid her on a cot and covered her with a blanket rough but warm. The fire popped softly, the only sound between them. He ladled broth into a tin cup and set it within her reach. His hands were scarred, the hands of a man who had fought the land and lost more than once, but they moved with a surprising gentleness. Eleanor's lips touched the rim of the cup. Warmth slid down her throat, settling in the hollow, ache of her stomach. She dared a glance at him, this giant who had found her in the dirt. He sat by the hearth, silent, his face unreadable in the firelight. He did not ask her name, nor why she had been abandoned. His presence was neither probing nor dismissive. It was simply there, steady as the earth. Outside, the night deepened. The wind carried faint echoes from town, snatches of gossip, laughter brittle with cruelty. Eleanor closed her eyes, and for the first time in many nights, sleep came not as a thief but as a balm. Morning light spilled across the cabin floor when she woke. Her body remained weak, yet a strange calm wrapped around her. Through the window, she saw Jedediah chopping wood. Each swing of the axe was deliberate, the muscles in his arms taut beneath his shirt. She watched the rhythm of his labor, the clean split of cedar, the quiet patience in every movement. Her hand strayed to her belly. The child stirred faintly within her, alive still. And something within her, though fragile, began to stir as well. The whispers of town might have cast her away, but here in the solitude of the wilderness, she felt a flicker she thought long extinguished. She did not yet know if it was hope or merely the echo of survival, but it was enough to draw breath again. From the woods came the sound of the axe, steady, resolute. She lay back, listening, and wondered, had shame truly ended her life, or had it only carried her to a threshold she had not yet dared to cross? And in that question, trembling and uncertain, her story turned. Dawn stretched pale ribbons across the wilderness, spilling through the cabin window, where Eleanor stirred beneath the coarse blanket. Her body remained fragile, every movement an effort, yet the child within her shifted with a persistence that tethered her to life. Beyond the glass, Jedediah Boone was already at work, shoulders broad beneath the worn fabric of his shirt, axe rising and falling with the steady rhythm of a man who had made his peace with solitude. She lay watching, not with fear, but with a hushed wonder, as if the cadence of his labor offered her a rhythm to breathe by. When she rose, unsteady, he noticed but said nothing, only moved a chair closer to the fire for her to sit. The silence between them was not emptiness, but something else, a language made of gestures. He placed a bowl of porridge in front of her, steam curling upward, and returned to his work without a word. She tasted it, simple, salted, sustaining, and found her throat tight with unexpected gratitude. Days slipped forward in this quiet manner. He showed her how to mend a torn hem with sinew thread, how to stir a stew so it thickened properly, how to stack kindling so the fire caught easily. He never forced her to speak, and yet the gentleness of his teaching coaxed her into moments of laughter, shy and fragile, but alive. In the flicker of firelight one evening, she dared glance at him fully, and saw that his eyes, gray as winter rivers, carried sorrow deep as her own. Yet beyond the shelter of the cabin, the world did not sleep. When Jedediah brought her to town for supplies, whispers rose like dust devils. "That's her, the one Samuel Burke tossed aside. Living with the mountain man now, God help her." Mrs. Kincaid's voice carried sharp as a needle. Better a cabin in the wild than shaming good folk here. Eleanor felt each word burrow beneath her skin, shame blooming hot against her cheeks. She lowered her head, wishing only to vanish. Jedediah stood beside her, tall as a pine, unmoved by their stares. Later, when they walked back along the wagon path, she dared murmur, "They'll never stop." His reply came quiet, gravel thick. "They don't know you. Let them talk." She turned to him then, startled by the rare softness in his voice, and something within her, long starved of kindness, unfolded like a bud pressed by spring. But the past would not leave her. Samuel Burke, stung by humiliation, heard the rumors that spread like wildfire. One afternoon, when the cicadas droned loudest, he arrived at the cabin with 2 ranch hands. Their horses stamped the dust, and Samuel's laughter carried bitter. "Didn't take you long to find a bed, Eleanor. Guess I was too quick to call you frail." His words were knives, meant to cut deep. Jedediah stepped forward, silent but immovable, his size alone a barrier. The axe in his hand hung loose yet threatening. For a tense breath, the air thickened. Samuel sneered, muttered something about letting her rot with a hermit, and turned his horse. The men rode off, but Eleanor's heart stayed clenched, the sting of his words lodging deeper than the fear. That night the storm broke, sky tearing open with rain and lightning. Eleanor woke with a sharp pain low in her belly, sharper than anything she had yet endured. She gasped, clutching at her side, her breath coming in ragged waves. Jedediah rushed to her, his face pale beneath the lamplight. The child was coming too soon, her body unready. Thunder rattled the cabin walls as he fetched water, blankets, anything he thought might save her. The hours that followed blurred into agony. Eleanor drifted in and out, sweat soaking her hair, her cries swallowed by the storm's fury. At one point she whispered, "I can't. I don't have the strength." Her hand trembled, slipping from her belly as if releasing both herself and the child. For a moment, she truly believed her life was ending here, in a cabin of a man she barely knew, unloved, unwanted. Jedediah caught her hand in his calloused fingers trembling. His voice broke, rough with desperation. "Don't leave me alone again." It was the first time he had revealed the wound beneath his silence. And in those words she heard not only his plea but his own long loneliness, a cavern deeper than her shame. Something shifted inside her then. The will to surrender faltered. She clenched her teeth, fought for breath, fought for the life within her, fought because someone finally needed her to stay. With Jedediah's steady presence beside her, she bore down through the pain, her body shaking with the force of survival. And when at last the child's cry pierced the storm, raw and fierce, Eleanor collapsed back against the blankets, sobbing not from weakness, but from a release greater than she had ever known. Jedediah knelt beside her, his massive frame hunched close, his hands awkward yet tender as he wrapped the tiny infant and placed it gently in her arms. The child's warmth pressed against her, fragile yet alive, and she felt a surge of love so powerful it frightened her. Dawn arrived quietly, the storm spent, the world washed clean. Through the window the sky blushed with first light, and the air smelled of cedar and wet earth. Eleanor lay exhausted, her child asleep against her breast. Jedediah sat nearby, shoulders slumped, eyes ringed with shadows from a sleepless night. Yet when she lifted her gaze to him, he did not look away. He reached, tentative, and their hands met over the small bundle. No words passed, for none were needed. The gesture was enough, an unspoken vow of shared life. Outside, Dry Creek would still murmur, tongues wagging sharper than ever. Samuel would stew in bitterness, and Mrs. Kincaid would find new poison to spread. Yet here, within these timber walls, something had been forged that could not be broken by gossip. The fragile beginnings of a family, born not from pride or arrangement, but from survival, tenderness, and will. Eleanor closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to feel the weight of the child and the quiet heat of Jedediah's hand upon hers. The world beyond remained hostile, yet here in this moment, she no longer felt like a discarded bride or a burden unfit for life. She felt, against all odds, chosen. Her lips parted, a whisper carried only to the newborn. We lived, and though the morning was gentle, the certainty within her words struck like thunder. For she knew this was not an ending, but the first true beginning of her life.